Violence against women politicians and journalists. It is important to discuss violence against women politicians and women journalists for a few reasons. Number one, the abuse, harassment, and intimidation we see directed toward women politicians is very similar to the categories of behavior we see in abusive personal relationships. Number two, while women politicians have been the targets of abuse, harassment, intimidation, and violence for years, women journalists are experiencing a greater than ever volume of abuse, harassment, intimidation, and violence. The experience is significantly worse in volume and tone for racially marginalized women, gender and sexually diverse people, disabled women, and certainly if one's identity intersects in multiple ways. And number three, subjecting women to this kind of behavior is a threat to both democracy and to a free press, as victims and survivors of this abuse reduce their presence on social media, stop writing about or talking about various issues, consider leaving journalism or politics, and actually do leave journalism or politics. Online abuse, harassment, intimidation, and violence is costing women their productivity and impacting their mental health.
There's been a sea change in the last 5 or 6 years, at least from my experience, in terms of social media and the amount of the torrent of abuse that comes towards people. Anybody speaking out about just about any issue, it seems to be the degree of it, increases with. When it's a female or a person of color, like I see it in the newsroom, and if those voices can't be heard, if the personal cost is so great, that's a real problem, because there are issues that need to be talked about, and being quiet about it isn't going to fix anything. So it's something that we're going to have to deal with, like as a society, not just in terms of the media and journalism. The whole thing of patriarchy and that sort of thing is that they just want women to shut up and be in the kitchen, barefoot in the kitchen. And it's that idea of taking people's voices away, and almost in a sense control, right? You're controlling what can be said, or, you're in your own little way, trying to stop the conversation. Interestingly enough, it's almost like the more important the conversation is, the more, the more it impacts people, the louder the voices are to shut up.
Look, I think there's a base level of harassment that journalists just live with day to day now, and it's deeply unfortunate for all kinds of reasons. And one of which is we play this particular role in a democratic society in terms of informing the public and holding people of power to account. And a lot of this is designed to try to get us to stop doing that job for whatever the motive is of the person who's doing it. But as I said before, there's sort of levels of this, right? So, women tend to get it worse than the men. People of color get it worse than Caucasian reporters. And then if you check all the boxes, if you are a female and a visible minority, for instance, you're just going to get it a whole lot worse. And there are lots of cases, and a lot of my colleagues in broadcast in particular, but also in print, who just get outright targeted for it. And it's so interesting because like there's a couple of columnists at the Toronto Star who are women of color. And depending on who they are, it's also obvious, this person is a Muslim or this person is a Sikh or something. And then that also becomes the target. So the harassers will target their sexual identity, or try to. They will target their racial identity, usually with racial epithets and so on. And then if they're say, there was a couple ugly incidences last year with some folks in Toronto where the target also happened to be Muslim. And so a lot of it, really like old school, Islamophobia, you must be a terrorist, or making fun of the fact that they may wear a headscarf or something. It just escalates. They pick on any little thing that they know will make the target feel unsafe.
This has been some of the other challenge for me in this. It kind of plays itself out on social media, but there's been so much mind games, I would say. It's not criticism. It's not valid political criticism. Mind games get played, and you try and describe why what they're doing is misogyny because they're not criticizing any of my colleagues, my male colleagues, in the same way for the same thing. They're coming at me And I didn't know what hit me. I ended up listening to podcasts and reading books on power and control, narcissistic behavior, and abuse. And I realized I'm in an abusive relationship with certain people in the community, and I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to deal with it. And although I'm in a position of power, they also got me. They're my residents. I can't call it out. I can't say what it is. And when you try and explain what they're doing, they get very defensive. We're not misogynists. We love women.
We love our wives.
I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about this and objectively.
Yeah. And there are studies that show that men receive the same amount of criticism as women. What those studies don't investigate is the tone and the volume, right? Or the same, they'll say it's that men receive uncivil messages just like women do, men politicians, women politicians. I'm like, okay, but let's talk about the content of those messages, because you might be criticizing our male colleagues for decisions that they've made or positions that they've taken on things or that sort of thing. I have yet to receive any sort of feedback that is related to a decision I have made, a political stance that I've taken. It is always personal. It's about me, it's about my children, it's about my ex-husband, it's about, like, it's never, oh, you voted in favor of every other week garbage, here's why I don't like that idea, right? Even when some of these people have agreed with me and they've said, oh, Councillor Yip is right here. She's a garbage human being, but she's right. I'm like,
I know, I've seen that all the time on social media and in reference to you. And comments like that, but even I normally don't agree with her.
Yeah.
They always have to say that.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating because I love politics and I love to debate issues. I could just talk. I'm very passionate about things. But it's frustrating with this is oftentimes what doesn't get reported on, right? If you Google my name, it's really not some of the things that I felt like I've accomplished, right? It's stuff that's just frustrating, and I wish it wasn't there. And I feel like some of the stuff that's come at me has been intentional in some ways. Some people want to grind you down and get you out.
Yeah. As noted earlier, one of the most concerning things about the harassment and abuse of women politicians is how similar it is to intimate partner violence. While the tactics differ to some degree, the categories of behavior are the same.
The amazing thing is, as well, and people don't believe it, but in terms of a double standard here, that there are colleagues on your council who will say anything about any subject, apparently, and get nothing back except a few claps. Oh, good for you. And as a female, I just can't imagine, right, that just sharing an opinion is so triggering for people that they want their politicians to be what? Silent and compliant?
Right.
Like,
a lot of people say, oh, it's not about gender. Point me to where it says anything in that message about gender. It doesn't need to have the word gender in it or the word woman in it or any of that to be about gender. The other message that we get is, well, the men deal with it too. Well, here's the thing. The men who are willing to even engage with me and other women politicians on this subject, they have clearly publicly stated in council meetings, on social media, in traditional media, they do not get anywhere near the volume or the type of messages of this kind that we do.
Yeah. It is a different situation for women. And you cannot say it's the same. It is nowhere near the same.
Yep.
Right? It is not close to that.
Said, oh, you don't need to be afraid. You don't need to feel threatened. There were a couple of them this morning that found it hilarious that I said in the story with Bill that, whether it meets the threshold for criminal charges to be threatening it's completely different than if it makes me feel unsafe. That shouldn't be funny to you. Making me feel unsafe shouldn't be funny.
It's all upon the spectrum, the continuum, of you will, of threatening, harassing to violence against females. Look at the British politician, right?
Yeah.
Who was just a woman and was killed for that. And I'm looking at the news today about Adam Strong was convicted of 2 murders against women, that there is a 19-year-old man who stabbed a 17-year-old girl in an Edmonton high school, that a British woman went missing and a police officer in Britain is accused of her death, right? Like, violence against women doesn't have to be specific and the worst kind for us not to be concerned about it. And it is part of a continuum and a spectrum.
Women. That's right. And it's because they're women.
This is the power and control wheel that is used to describe the categories, tactics, and by extension, impacts of intimate partner violence. Not every victim or survivor of intimate partner violence will be subjected to all of these behaviors, but the power and control wheel, which you can find in your guide for journalists, depicts several categories of behavior, including how the behavior may escalate. Based on research conducted by the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, the power and control wheel was adapted to identify the tactics that are most commonly used against women politicians in an effort to silence them, diminish their work or desire to do their work, or drive them out of politics entirely. You can also find the adapted power and control wheel in your guide for journalists. Note that an extra outer ring has been added to this adaptation of the power and control wheel to denote both sources and amplifiers of the violence to which women politicians are subjected. Violence against women politicians is enacted and responded to by colleagues, constituents, media, and structures and systems. Yeah, I mean, the gaslighting that goes on is outrageous, right? That we're lying about it, that we're making it up, that we're blowing it out of proportion, that, all of these things. And I can't appear angry about it. I can't appear sad about it. I can't, I have a whole range of feelings depending on what the way that it comes at me, or like whether it's videos or cartoons or voicemails or emails, or, there's a whole range of things that I feel. And people have said, oh, but you always just handle it so well. You're so composed, and, there's so much grace in your response and all of these things. And I, first of all, feel like that's actually not true. But also, people don't see me, reduced to tears in my house or slamming my hands on my desk because somebody has said something that is just so outrageous. Or in some cases, seeing something that somebody has drawn or a video or whatever, and having to actually keep myself from throwing up because I'm so disgusted by it.
We're not allowed to be angry, and that's very hard. It's very hard to keep a good mental state when you're dealing with all of this and you're not allowed to express anger. When the rock came through the window and there was the spray paint on my house, I did respond with humor both times initially. I try to make light of things because I hadn't processed it yet. The humor response was to try and make everybody else feel better, show my kids how I handled it. Look, I made fun. I took the piss out of whoever did this, and, we're just going to carry on. I think I'm still processing it, and I'm still angry about it.
My son, who, he's 16, and things will happen, and he'll, see something over my shoulder, or I'll have just heard something, and I, he knows that something is going on, and he's a very even-tempered, pretty easygoing kid. And every now and then something will happen, and then a couple hours later I'm like, Bud, why are you behaving like this? This is not, and he'll go, oh, well, that email, or and he's angry, and he doesn't know how to process that because someone is attacking his mom. With my younger child, it's okay, how are you feeling? I just had a conversation with your brother, and this is, how are you feeling? And they'll go, I don't really understand what's happening, but I don't like it. It makes me feel uncomfortable, right? And there's certainly the people who are engaging in this kind of behavior against us, they don't care what our family thanks. I don't care about the impact on our children or husband or ex-husband or, those sorts of things. But it's there needs to be an acknowledgement that there is an impact on our families, and that's not okay. It's not appropriate. There is a balance to be found in covering and discussing harassment and abuse directed at women politicians. Not every instance needs to be covered by the media and would only serve to continue to victimize the politician who is the target. That said, it is important for the general public to be aware of the environment in which women politicians are currently forced to operate. As was seen most tragically with Jo Cox, a British MP, the harassment, abuse, and intimidation described in the Power and Control Wheel adapted by the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters can escalate. Jo Cox was murdered by Thomas Mair, who held views that provided him with a motive, utterly misplaced of course, to kill her. In Niagara, behavior endured by women and racially marginalized politicians and public servants includes harassment via social media platforms, email, and telephone, sexual harassment and innuendo, racial epithets directed at children of politicians, sexually suggestive voicemails, threatening behavior, graffiti on homes, and rocks through windows. I mean, I don't feel, when this stuff is coming at me, I don't feel like I'm in a position of power at all. At all. It is definitely people who they're seeking maximum pain, right? Talking about my dead sister, saying things, emailing me things like, it's no wonder your sister killed herself.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to vocally push back against that kind of stuff because as a politician, you are actually in a role that is considered to be power. And so how is that taken by the media and the public, right? Oh, you're trying to shut people down and shut people up. And there's been a few things that have happened that I've sought legal advice. And lawyers have said, it's absolutely a case you could win. Consider the impact of that, right? That you're giving this person more of a platform.
Yes.
That there will be media coverage and what's that going to look like, right? And all of these other things where it's like, okay, I will just suck it up like it doesn't bother me.
Yes, it is essentially good advice because, taking things through the courts or, charging someone with criminal harassment is going to draw more attention. Are you going to win? You're not sure. And it is more media attention. And then you're just attracting more opinions to it and you're opening yourself up for more abuse. We're in a workplace in a sense, but we don't really have any workplace protections because we're considered a board. Mm-hmm. And so workplace violence and harassment policies at a provincial level don't really apply to us. And, there's debates on blocking constituents. And I've blocked a few people a few times because they just constantly harass me. And then I get threatened that they're going to sue me for blocking them, even though they can still reach me by email and they could call me, but they just want to constantly chip away at me. Mm-hmm. And, then when I block them, they act like they're the victim.
Yeah. While much of what precedes is about women politicians, there are many authors who are drawing parallels between women politicians and women journalists in terms of the abuse they endure and its impacts. The Women's Media Center, in a 2019 report, calls it out plainly and says that taking online harassment seriously is at the core of an inclusive newsroom and a critical step toward ensuring free speech for all.
If you can't stand the heat, don't go in the kitchen, or if you don't want to be mocked, then don't have a public-facing job or don't do the work that you do. For us, I think a lot of journalists kind of thought that for a long time, but there's a newspaper in the States called the Capital Gazette. And there was a guy who was harassing their editorial staff. He was a huge Trump supporter, didn't like their coverage of then President Trump. And he was a long-known person to harass their journalists, by email, by phone, social media, that kind of thing. And one day he showed up with a shotgun and killed 5 people. And I think 3, you have to check, but I think 3 of the Capital Gazette victims were reporters. There was a person in sales and a manager. He was just killing people indiscriminately. And when that happened, security across newsrooms in North America changed overnight. And we all started to take this stuff a lot more seriously because it has consequences. Whereas in the past, it might have been a one-off thing. One guy or one crank sends you a hate message, you send that to police, it gets dealt with the way it gets dealt with. Now, it's because it's done in public, and because there are, there's Trump and Maxime Bernier and people who have influence over a lot of other people on social media saying, get the reporters, the reporters are the enemy of the people. We hear that in Canada. It's not an American thing. We hear it in Canada all the time. That escalates the degree of hatred toward journalists. And so the threats become more intense and they become more frequent. And it becomes much more problematic because now security, your physical security and your online security are something that you're always having to manage in your day-to-day.
In a 2021 survey by Ipsos, 72% of media workers indicated they had experienced some form of harassment while doing their work over the last year. The harassment ranged from online threats or harassment to threats or harassment in person or by phone to being physically attacked. More alarming, though not surprising, is that women, younger people, racially marginalized people, and gender and sexually diverse people face disproportionately more online harassment than other groups, cisgender, heterosexual, middle-aged white men. And the harassment takes more severe and personal tones. It should be noted that this is in line with what Statistics Canada found in relation to their surveys about experiences of intimate partner violence and sexual violence. In a nationwide study released in May 2022, it was found that rates of harassment are increasing. Non-binary and transgender people are more likely than other groups to experience online harassment. Women encountered harassment and violence at every turn, by email, on social media, in the field, and in the newsroom. And women were more likely to be sexually harassed, be on the receiving end of hate speech, and be threatened and intimidated. Most harassment took the form of sexualized messages or images, physical threats, or comments related to gender identity, ethnicity, or nationality, making the harassment personal rather than being legitimate criticism of a journalist's work. Women received 90% of harassment based on gender, 76% of harassment that targeted their appearance, and 75% of harassment that targeted their Indigenous status. In addition to all of this being concerning because of the potential for the behavior to escalate and become more violent, we have to discuss it in terms of the impacts it has even before it potentially escalates. Women report higher rates of psychological harm from seemingly inescapable harassment, and at least twice as many women as men increased security at work and or home, left their residence, changed their contact information, and or quit social media. Ipsos reports that the impact of harassment experienced on the job has severe personal effects and industry-wide consequences. Queer feminist author Laurie Penny has said, "People talk unironically of their right to free expression while doing everything in their power to hurt, humiliate, and silence any woman with a voice or a platform, screeching abuse at us until we back down or shut up. They speak of censorship, but say nothing of the silencing in which they are engaged." And this is precisely the point. The people who engage in this kind of behavior are aiming to silence and drive women out of politics and journalism, or, at a minimum, create a chilling effect for other women who might consider entering politics or journalism.
What's really insidious about a lot of it is the people who do this regularly, they know how to walk the line. There's a line that they're aware of that if they cross it, okay, the police might actually do something. So they walk right up to it. And they will, so if somebody says to you, "I want you to die horribly," that can be construed as a threat. The police will not say that's a death threat. And so they'll tend to leave that alone. But it has pushed some women to get offline when they don't need to do it for their jobs, take extra precautions to make sure that nobody knows anything about their personal lives or their kids or their families and so on. Like, it does change the dynamic of the job that they're doing. And there have been some who have left because they didn't sign up for this in the first place.
As noted earlier, several authors discuss harassment, intimidation, and abuse of women politicians and women journalists as threats to democracy and a free press. In her book, Credible Threat, Sarah Soberaj outlines most succinctly the three distinct democratic disturbances created by the prevalence of identity-based attacks online. The first is a pattern of deterioration in political discourse. For example, drawing sexually suggestive cartoons about women who happen to be politicians and calling them political cartoons, or, of course, vandalizing a woman politician's home and justifying it because she holds different political views than you do. The second is the chilling effect on women wanting to get involved in politics, whether it be in running for political office or supporting other women to do so. And the third is circulating disinformation or misinformation that erodes trust in our electoral processes. For example, spreading false information, including conspiracy theories, about elected officials not actually being elected. A lot of the literature that I've read around violence against women politicians, they talk about it as it's a threat to democracy. When you are silencing women, trying to drive them out of politics, trying to put a chilling effect on other women getting into politics, women of color, people of color, disabled women, that is a threat to democracy. If you are saying, no, we only want this type of person in politics, this is the only thing we're going to accept, it's a threat to democracy. You are saying these voices are not okay. We will do everything we can to ensure that they are not part of the democratic process.
Yes, I fundamentally believe if we don't fix this, it is so terrible for democracy. Mm-hmm. We're not going to move forward. And I don't know what all the answers are, but we got to come up with something. We have to understand what all the barriers are for people to participate, for single women, for people who've experienced violence or poverty, Black women, Indigenous women, people from the LGBTQ community. There are a lot of barriers, and there's a lot of violence, intergenerational trauma, people who have never sat at a table. I carry a lot of privilege, but I come from a working class background and never thought I would be at any sort of table before. But I understand it's easier for me to sit here than a lot of other people at a political table. And this is something that needs to be addressed. I think the media needs to figure it out as well.
Given the nature of our work today, it is not feasible to tell women to just remove themselves from social media, when doing so could have a significant impact on their livelihood or ability to communicate their message. In considering both the traumatic impacts on women and the threats to democracy and a free press, we must find ways to minimize and call out, but also not amplify, the cyber-sexist harassment to which women are subjected.
What do you do about it? Like, in terms of trying to make it manageable for someone, because cutting off communication doesn't work either. Because of the nature of what we do, you need to be, have the public has to be able to kind of get to you, get information to you. The problem is that also opens the door for people who are abusive. I like that the kind of the cards are on the table now, that there's no just ignore it, it'll go away. That was the way it was. The newsroom culture was how you handle these things. Ignore it and it will go away. And I think what we had in the last couple of years is people saying, this is too much. I can't ignore this. This isn't a good way of doing it. And I give some credit to management for recognizing that. And there does seem to be a push. I don't really have seen any solutions yet. Because if there was an easy solution, it would have been done. But I do see that the conversation's begun, and that's where things start. We need women to report. We need that, their lens, their life experiences. That makes it's really important part of sitting around the table, and we absolutely need that. And the newspaper is better, the journalism is better for it. So we better figure it out.
Key takeaways. Online abuse, harassment, intimidation, and violence is costing women and gender and sexually diverse people their productivity and impacting their mental health. Online violence experienced by women politicians and women journalists is a threat to democracy and a free press, and it is very similar to the categories of behavior we see in intimate partner violence. It is unrealistic to tell women and gender and sexually diverse people to remove themselves from social media. When covering stories about online abuse, harassment, intimidation, and violence, consider how to educate the public about the experiences to which women and gender and sexually diverse people are subjected without also amplifying the messages of abusers. Understand the relationships between inclusivity, online harassment, and free speech, and how they impact each other.